the 13th tribe, the Khazar Empire and its heritage. From the chronological point of view, the next event to be discussed should be the conversion of the Khazars to Judaism around AD 740. But to see that the remarkable event in its proper perspective, one should have at least some sketchy idea of the habits, customs, and everyday life among the Khazars prior to the conversion. Alas, we have no lively eyewitness reports such as Priscus' descriptions of Atan's court. What we do have are mainly second-hand accounts and compilations by Byzantine and Arab chroniclers, which are rather schematic and fragmentary, with two exceptions. One is a letter, purportedly from the Khazar king, to be discussed in Chapter 2. The other is a travelogue by an observant Arab traveler, Ibn Thabilan, who, like Priscus, was a member of a diplomatic mission from a civilized court to the barbarians of the north. The court was that of Caliph al-Muqtadir, and the diplomatic mission traveled from Baghdad through Persia and Bukhara to the land of the Volga Bulgars. The official pretext for this grandiose expedition was a letter of invitation from the Bulgar king, who asked the Caliph A, for religious instructors to convert his people to Islam, and B, to build him a fortress which would enable him to defy his overlord, the king of the Khazars. The invitation, which was no doubt prearranged by earlier diplomatic contracts, also provided an opportunity to create goodwill among the various Turkish tribes inhabiting territories through which the mission had to pass. By preaching the message of the Quran and distributing huge amounts of gold bakshish. The opening paragraph of our traveler's account read, "This is the book of Hamad ibn Fadlan, ibn al-Abbas, ibn Rasid, ibn Hamad, an official to the services of General Muhammad, ibn Yaman, the ambassador of Caliph al-Muqtadir to the king of the Bulgars, in which he relates what he saw in the land of the Turks, the Khazars, the Rus, the Bulgars, the Bashkirs, and others, their varied kinds of religion, the histories of their king, and their conduct in many walks of life." The letter of the king of the Bulgars reached the commander of the faithful, al-Muqtadir. He asked him therein to send him someone to give him religious instructions and acquaint him with the law of Islam, to build him a mosque and a pulpit so that he may carry out his mission of converting the people all over his country. He also entreated the Caliph to build him a fortress to defend himself against hostile kings. Everything that the king asked for was granted by the Caliph. I was chosen to read the Caliph's message to the king, to hand over the gifts the Caliph sent him, and to supervise the work of the teachers and interpreters of the law. There follow some details about the financing of the mission and names of participants. And so we started on Thursday the 11th Safar of the year 309, June 21st, AD 921, from the city of peace, Baghdad, capital of the Caliphate. The date of the expedition, it will be noted, is much later than the events described in the previous section, but as far as the customs and institutions of the Khazars' pagan neighbors are concerned, this probably makes not much difference, and the glimpses we get of the life of these nomadic tribes convey at least some idea of what life among the Khazars may have been during that earlier period, before the conversion, when they adhere to a form of shamanism similar to that still practiced by their neighbors in Ibn Fadlan's time. The progress of the mission was slow and apparently uneventful until they reached Khawarizm, the border province of the Caliphate south of the Sea of Aral. Here the governor in charge of the province tried to stop them from proceeding further by arguing that between his country and the kingdom of the Bulgars there were 1,000 tribes of disbelievers who were sure to kill them. In fact, his attempts to disregard the Caliphi's instructions to let their mission pass might have been due to other motives. He realized that the mission was indirectly aimed against the Khazars, with whom he maintained a flourishing trade and friendly relations. In the end, however, he had to give in, and the mission was allowed to proceed to Gurgan, on the estuary of the Amu Darya. Here they hibernated for 3 months because of the intense cold, a factor which looms large in many Arab travelers' tales. The river was frozen for 3 months. We looked at the landscape and thought that the gates of the cold hell had been opened for us. Verily, I saw that the marketplace and the streets were totally empty because of the cold. Once, when I came out of the bath and got home, I saw that my beard had frozen into a lump of ice, and I had to thaw it in front of the fire. I stayed for some days in a house which was inside of another house, compound, and in which there stood a Turkish felt tent, and I lay inside the tent wrapped in clothes and furs, but nevertheless my cheeks often froze to the cushion. Around the middle of February, the thaw set in. The mission arranged to join a mighty caravan of 5,000 men and 3,000 pack animals to cross the northern steppes, and brought the necessary supplies. Camels, skin boats made of camel hides for crossing rivers, bread, millet, and spiced meat for 3 months. The natives warned them about the even more frightful cold in the north and advised them what clothes to wear. So each of us put on a kurtak, camel sole, over that a woolen kaftan, over that a buslin, fur-lined coat, over that a burqa, fur coat, and a fur cap, under which only the eyes could be seen, a simple pair of underpants, and a lined pair, and over them the trousers, house shoes of K molt, shot green leather, and over those also another pair of boots. And when one of us mounted a camel, he was unable to move because of his clothes. Ibn Fadlan, the fastidious Arab, liked neither the climate nor the people of Khawarizm. They are, in respect to their language and constitution, the most repulsive of men. Their language is like the chatter of starlings. At a day's journey, there is a village called Ardqua, whose inhabitants are called Cardals. Their language sounds entirely like the croaking of frogs. They left on March 3rd and stopped for the night in a caravanserai called Zamgan, the gateway to the territory of the Gunz Turks. From here onward, the mission was in foreign land, entrusting our fate to the all-powerful and exalted God. During one of the frequent snowstorms, Ibn Fadlan rode next to a Turk who complained, "What does the ruler want from us? He is killing us with cold. If we knew what he wants, we would give it to him." Ibn Fadlan, "All he wants is that you people should say, 'There is no God save Allah.'" The Turk laughed. "If we knew that is so, we should say so." There were many such incidents, which Ibn Fadlan reports without appreciating the independence of mind which they reflected, nor did the envoy of the Baghdad court appreciate the nomadic tribesman's fundamental concept for authority. The following episode also occurred in the country of the powerful Gunz Turks, who paid tribute to the Khazars and, according to some sources, were closely related to them. The next morning, one of the Turks met us. He was ugly in build, dirty in appearance, contemptible in manner, base in nature, and we were moving through a heavy rain. Then he said, "Halt!" Then the whole caravan of 3,000 animals and 5,000 men halted. Then he said, "Not a single one of you is allowed to go on." We halted then, obeying his orders. Then we said to him, "We are friends of the Kudarkin, Viceroy." He began to laugh and said, "Who is the Kudarkin? I shit on his head." Then he said, "Bread." I gave him a few loaves of bread. He took them and said, "Continue your journey. I have taken pity on you." The democratic methods of the Kunz, practiced when a decision had to be taken, were even more bewildering to the representative of the authoritative theocracy. They are nomads and have houses of felt. They stay for a while one place and then move on. One can see their tents dispersed here and there all over the place according to nomadic custom. Although they had led a hard life, they behave like donkeys that have lost their way. They have no religion which would link them to God, nor are they guided by reason. They do not worship anything. Instead, they call their headman lords, and one of them consults his chieftains and asks, "O Lord, what shall I do in this or that matter?" The course of action they adapt is decided by taking counsel among themselves, but when they have decided on a measure and are ready to carry it through, even the humblest and lowliest among them can come and disrupt that decision. The sexual mores of the Gunz and other tribes were a remarkable mixture of liberalism and savagery. Their women wore no veils in the presence of their men or strangers, nor do the women cover any parts of their bodies in the presence of people. One day we stayed at the place of a Guns and were sitting around. His wife was also present. As we conversed, the woman uncovered her private parts and scratched them, and we all saw it. Thereupon we covered our faces and said, "May God forgive us." The husband laughed and said to the interpreter, "Tell them we uncover it in your presence so that you may see and restrain yourselves. But it cannot be attained. This is better than when it is covered up and yet attainable." Adultery is alien to them, yet when they discover that someone is an adulterer, they split him in two halves. This they do by bringing together the branches of two trees, tie him to the branches, and then let both trees go, so that the man tied to them is torn in two. He does not say whether the same punishment was meted out to the guilty woman. Later on, when talking about the Volga Bulgars, he describes as equally savage method of splitting adulterers into two, applying to both men and women, yet he notes with astonishment, Bulgars of both sexes swim naked in the rivers and have as little bodily shame as the Guns. As for homosexuality, which in Arab countries was taken as a matter of course, Ibn Fadlan says that it is regarded by the Turks as a terrible sin. But in the only episode he relates to prove his point, the seducer of a beardless youth gets away with a fine of 400 sheep. Accustomed to the splendid baths of Baghdad, our travelers could not get over the dirtiness of the Turks. The Guns do not wash themselves after defecating or urinating, nor do they bathe after seminal pollution or on the other occasions. They refuse to have anything to do with water, particularly in winter. When the Guns commander-in-chief took off his luxurious coat of brocade to don a new coat the mission had brought him, they saw that his underclothes were fraying apart from dirt, and it is their custom never to take off the garment they wear close to their bodies until it disintegrates. Another Turkish tribe, the Bashkirs, they shave their beards and eat their lice. They search the folds of their undergarments and crack the lice with their teeth. When Ibn Fadlan watched a Bashkir do this, the later remarked to him, "They are delicious." All in all, it is not an engaging picture. Our fastidious travelers' contempt for the barbarians was profound, but it was only aroused by their uncleanliness and what he considered as indecent exposure of the body. The savagery of their punishments and the sacrificial rites left him quite indifferent. Thus, he describes the Bulgars' punishment for manslaughter with detached interest, without his otherwise frequent expressions of indignation. They make for him, the delinquent, a box of birchwood, put him inside, nailed the lid on the box, put 3 loaves of bread and a can of water beside it, and suspend the box between 2 tall poles, saying, "We have put him between heaven and earth, that he may be exposed to the sun and the rain, and that the deity may perhaps forgive him." And so he remains suspended until time lets him decay and the winds blow him away. He also describes with similar aloftness the funeral sacrifice of hundreds of horses and herds of other animals, and the gruesome ritual killing of a Raz, slave girl, at her master's bearer. About pagan religions he has little to say, but the Bashkir's phallus cult arouses his interest, for he asks, through the interpreter, one of the natives, the reason for his worshipping a wooden penis, and notes down his reply: "Because I issued from something similar and know of no other creator who made me." He then adds that some of them, the Bashkirs, believe in 12 deities: a god for winter, another for summer, one for the rain, one for the wind, one for the trees, one for men, one for the horse, one for water, one for the night, one for the day, a god of death, and one for the earth, while that God who dwells in the sky is the greatest among them, but takes counsel with the others, and thus all are contented with each other's doings. We have seen a group among them which worships snakes, and a group which worships fish, and a group which worships cranes. Among the Bulgars, Ibn Fadlan found a strange custom. When they observe a man who excels through quick-wittedness and knowledge, they say, "For this one it is more befitting to serve our Lord." They seize him, put a rope around his neck, and hang him on a tree where he is left until he rots away. Commenting on this passage, the Turkish Orientalist Zeki Validi Togan, undisputed authority on the Ibn Fadlan and his times, has this to say: "There is nothing mysterious about the cruel treatment meted out by the Bulgars to people who were overly clever. It was based on the simple, sober reasoning of the average citizens who wanted only to lead what they considered to be a normal life, and to avoid any risk or adventure into which the genius might lead them." He then quotes a Tartar proverb: "If you know too much, they will hang you, and if you are too modest, they will trample on you." He concludes that the victim should not be regarded simply as a learned person, but as an unruly genius, one who is too clever by half. This leads one to believe that the custom should be regarded as a measure of social defiance against change, a punishment of nonconformists and potential innovators. But a few lines further down, he gives a different interpretation. Ibn Fadlan describes not a single murder of 2 clever people, but one of their pagan customs, human sacrifice, by which the most excellent among men were offered as sacrifice to God. This ceremony was probably not carried out by common Bulgars, but by their tababis, or medicine men. Example, they're shamans, whose equivalents among the Bulgars and the Rus also wielded power of life and death over the people in the name of their cult. According to Ibn Rushd, the medicine men of the Rus could put a rope around the neck of anybody and hang him on a tree to invoke the mercy of God. When this was done, they say, "This is an offering to God." Perhaps both types of motivation were mixed together. Since sacrifice is a necessity, let's sacrifice the troublemakers. We shall see that human sacrifice was also practiced by the Khazars, including the ritual killing of the king at the end of his reign. We may assume that many other similarities existed between the customs of the tribes described by Ibn Fadlan and those of the Khazars. Unfortunately, he was debarred from visiting the Khazar capital and had to rely on information collected in territories under Khazar dominance, and particularly at the Bulgar court.